Hey everybody, and welcome back to Divulgence, and of course, happy Turtle Day, happy World Turtle Day, my favorite day. We got Habsburg Jolly West in the house, and we also have Adam from the Truth Desk. Well, Adam, what's going on, brother? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, Jordan. I like your shirt today in honor of World Turtle Day.
Yeah, man, got the fucking medallion and the shirt and the fucking hat. So, yeah, man, I love my turtles. So, yeah, I'll celebrate it, man. So, what's new? What's new, guys? Everything good? Everything cool?
Everything's good, man. I wanted to do this 9/11 thing because I just had like a Instagram and Facebook. I got all the socials, but I made some shorts on 9/11 and I got one of them got almost 1 million views, which was really cool.
Shit, dog. Sweet.
So
Good for you.
yeah, I think my Instagram's up to like 23,000 followers now. So
Nice.
pretty blessed with that, honestly.
That's awesome, dude.
And
Good
yeah,
for you, man.
thanks. I appreciate that. And I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying not to post too much spam to it and kind of keep it going and kind of deliver that truth seeking material to the audience. So
Good for you.
yeah.
Right on, man. Well, that's great news right off the top. Me and Habsburg have been talking about we want to this summer we're going to be jumping on the socials more. So yeah, we'll make sure to follow you on all your socials and to help pump your shit out, man, because we love your shit. So
Yeah, I'll do
yeah,
the same for you guys too.
yeah. I mean, we got to stick together, right? So that's great. So yeah, we'll have that conversation when the time comes. But yeah, man, great news. Those are great numbers, and to get you got one banging around 1 million. That's real good. Good for you, man.
I was shocked.
Hey, man,
And here's what's crazy, bro. Those same
there's so much
videos on
garbage out there that when someone puts something real good out there, don't be surprised. You got good
well,
stuff, man. So don't be surprised.
dude, a few things with that. Number one, TikTok completely throttles me. Like most videos I don't even try to post on TikTok.
I don't know if
Meanwhile,
I'm
I
gonna
just
get into
talked to
that.
someone.
Yeah.
I talked to someone and they were talking about seeing all kinds of weird spam conspiracies on TikTok
Yeah.
and YouTube. I post those same shorts to YouTube. They get like 100 views or just basically my subscribers. YouTube doesn't push any of that conspiracy stuff out. So it's a
Oh,
real
TikTok is really seems wild. I'm
since
not
they
on
got
it.
sold to Larry Ellison
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
right after Charlie Kirk was murdered.
That's right, man. Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh no, China's that's what China used to own TikTok, right?
Yes.
That's the one there was all the controversy about China owning it, and it's like, okay, well, just let this guy own it and it'll be all good. But yeah, I don't know. TikTok is like it's not my vibe.
Mm-mm.
Even if it's like content that we would like, just the I don't mind some videos sometimes with all the quick cuts and stuff, but uh, sometimes when I see that, I think, okay, how legit is this information, and how much is it like they're just making it really dramatic and hyping it up, and um, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
all of
You have to
the
be careful with that.
conspiracy TikTok videos have that like one like
That
spooky song
that eerie
behind it.
music,
It's
yeah,
like,
I hear that and I'm like, oh fuck, like get out of here, like and it's like almost grifter 101, right? So
I don't even like have that app downloaded. So like is that like song just like something that you
uh,
can like put in the
good
background
question.
with the app? Is that like part built into the
Good
app or
question. Do you
something?
have the app,
Yeah.
Adam?
No, but like so TikTok's got like a bunch of royalty-free music that you can use,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's one of them.
That's
They
one.
also
Okay.
had have you heard the
There's a
the
few
song
that I hear
Erica?
all the time. Sorry,
You heard
what
the
song?
song Erica? It's an old German Nazi marching song. All
Okay.
des Bundes, was den das
Yeah. Yeah.
tun
Okay.
damit.
Yeah.
Okay, so that song was in the TikTok library. I don't think they knew about it, and it got super popular. And because I remember people were posting this song like everyone's supposed to know this random obscure Nazi marching song. And I am a World War II buff. I've watched
Right.
documentaries, movies, learned, and I had never heard this song. I'm like, how do all these fucking 18-year-olds know this random obscure song that's from fucking TikTok?
Yeah. Nick Fuentes probably. Yeah. Like, but yeah, that's great. Yeah. No, you're right though. Like, yeah, it's so because if it's there, these kids are almost saying they're thinking like, okay, it's there for a reason. Like, they want us to use that, and then it's just crazy that it got picked up and circulated so much. I mean, yeah. I mean, what kind of any kind of content they were sticking it on, or was it like stuff where people
Well,
were walking or marching, or like stuff that like would make you want to think of Germany, or was it a free for all?
It was a thing. It was like an attachment you could put on a can of bug spray that was like a dome that you put over a bug and you sprayed it and it would gas the bug. And so so it was like this meme of people. The thing said "Made in Germany" on it, and so,
okay, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Oh man, interesting, man. I'm interested to see like what the like trolling has just got like wild. I'm interested to see like what the next generation, what kind of trollers they are, because I think we're at like our best right now. I don't know what generation is the best, but we have some amazing trollers out there right now. It's hilarious. So where would you like to start with 9/11? What kind of stuff have you been looking into particularly? Yeah, man. What do you think?
well, I mean, it's a big topic.
Yeah,
what
of course.
really got me into it was there was a really good documentary put out. Well, I mean, there's been several. Loose Change came out, I think, 2005. There was one put out by Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, which
Yep.
that was like the biggest 9/11 truth movement for a while. Richard Gage was part of that. And in that documentary, and I remember watching it when it first came out, but they talk about the physics of the collapse. You know, all these engineers talk about, I mean, just everything. First of all, the plane shouldn't have been able to punch through the structural steel on the outside. There's a very famous interview with Donald Trump on the day of 9/11 where Trump says, I don't think that a plane could have punched through. The newscasters, everyone was talking about explosives planted in the tower that would have basically been detonated as soon as the plane hit and go, to let the plane go in. Then there's just the fact of once the plane's already in there and burning, if you think about these towers, they're built with fire codes. They're built with non-combustible materials. The building itself is mostly steel and concrete. There's not that much combustible material in there. There's office furniture, drapes, carpet. And then once that initial fireball you see is from the jet fuel being dumped in and just igniting, which if you've ever lit a bonfire with gasoline, I don't think you're technically supposed to, but if you ever do that, there's a huge whoosh, or like a grill with lighter fluid. There's a big whoosh. And then after a minute, all that fuel is gone. And then it's just smoldering with whatever's in there. Well, there's not much in the towers to begin with to burn. And then that slow burn, according to the official analysis, slowly weakened the steel. Well, the problem with that is that jet fuel is burning in an oxygen poor environment, which we can see from that black smoke billowing out of the towers. So you have an oxygen starved fire, which should have been burning at maximum, 750 degrees, which if that was the case, those towers could probably still be on fire in New York City and have never collapsed.
And there have been fires in the World Trade Center, like in previous decades, like in the 70s, or there were fires in those buildings.
Yeah, there's one case, the Wang Fuk Court Apartments in Hong Kong. These buildings had all this like bamboo scaffolding on the outside that caught fire, caused all of the buildings to be completely engulfed in flame, and none of them collapsed. They burned for about 2 days.
Yes,
and
I remember that, the dick fuck or the Wang fuck. Yeah.
The dick fuck. Yeah, no. So that's actually it's only happened 3 times that a steel structured building's been brought down due to fire. World Trade Center 1 and 2 and World Trade Center 7, all on 9/11. I think there's some random building in Tehran, Iran that fell, due to fire, some old rickety skyscraper maybe. But yeah, there you go.
But I mean, if you and if you look at it, like that ain't what the World Trade Center looked like.
No,
it just started, it burned for 50 minutes and, or whatever, and then just fell down and
bullet.
Yep.
No, it was wild. I had a question, like, I don't know exactly how old you guys are, but I mean, where were you, and like, what do you remember about like 9/11, 2001?
Go ahead, Adam.
I was in 4th grade, and you know, I remember 9/11. I remember all the propaganda right after. And I remember the huge wave of patriotism in this country. People were flying American flags. There was that like country songs that came out, like "We'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way." Like the country was fired up, and you know there was probably about 20% of the country that just wanted to nuke the entire Middle East. You know that propaganda was really effective at post 9/11 Americans. Everyone was getting their news from mainstream media. I really don't think, you know, in my opinion, allegedly, this is a false flag. I don't think they would be so bold and brazen as to pull this off today with most people, young people getting their news from podcasts, online, X. I think
I
that
don't know if
they
I
had a
can.
narrow
Yeah.
window to do this right when everyone was still on legacy media. I don't think they would try this again today.
I think in a way it could be easier to pull off, you know, today
Really?
anyway.
Really?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you know, like with AI and everything like this, and you know,
Okay.
the ability to you know, alter algorithms and to be able to like put things out, to be able to suppress other things. Like I think it would be just as easy if not easier to pull it off now, but that's just me, like, because we don't really know what happens in the world, other than like people who are actually there. And like, yeah, there's you know
True.
8-9 million people in New York, but like only so many of them would even be able to like see it firsthand, like what happened, September 11th. So, that's kind of, my thing is I don't know that, what, would be like completely different if not maybe easier to control the narrative. But that's just, that's what I think. Where were you at, Jordan? What do you remember?
I was in grade five, five, and yeah, I remember it happened, and we were just getting to school pretty much, and they brought us inside after the morning bell, and some classrooms had televisions going. Um, very few, because everyone behind me, like grade four and below, I don't think they had a TV, because I don't know if they'd get it, but I think we had a TV. We kind of got it. We didn't know the gravity of it, and then the grade sixes had a TV. It seemed just really crazy. We didn't understand. I didn't understand the idea of, you know, the United States or North America is under attack. I didn't think like, oh, I didn't know it was some sort of attack at all. Um, I think, I don't even think I recall the news. I don't recall finding out that day that it was an attack, actually. I think we initially just heard that it was, like planes crash. We don't know what's going on. And then I think afterwards I found out, and I mean, I lived in Canada, so, and I didn't watch the news, so I didn't. My most of my recollection of it, until I started getting into that stuff when I grew older a few years later, was, um, if you remember sites like, I don't remember the one, but there were sites like eBombs World and stuff that had like themed games and stuff, and they had all the, like, they did like, that's when Britney Spears was really hot and having her like her breast implants, so they had like the famous Britney's boobs game. But yeah, they had all these like Osama bin Laden games and 9/11 themed games, um, and that's what made me realize, like, okay, this is linked to, you know like some type of warfare. um, and then Fahrenheit 9/11 came out, uh, and then that's kind of when I started to realize, like, holy crap, like that's a big deal, and everything involved. And then I think that's kind of what got me interested in like learning about politics and facts and stuff. I was still pretty young, but yeah. So, how about yourself?
um so I was, definitely a bit older. I had just, I guess, turned 20 like the month
Okay.
before. And I was like, I was like taking some classes at a like a community college at the time, and had like, I don't know why I had like scheduled myself for, I mean, it must have been like a 8:30 or like before 9 o'clock,
Ah,
class.
shit. Okay.
And it was like psychology 101. And this was like, obviously, nobody had like a, internet device. And, I don't even know if anybody in my class even, maybe, had cell phones, but nobody had them on. And so we were like in class, and this girl came in like late. And she's like, oh my God, like a plane just crashed into the World Trade Center in New York. And my professor looked at her and was like, we're in the middle of class. You need to like sit down and shut up, and so, like close the door. And we sat there and had like psychology class for like the next hour. And then when we get done, and like in the halls of the school, like it was just like pandemonium. And people, and we were like, oh, is that real? Like, this girl said that a plane hit the World Trade Center, and they're like, yeah, and another one just hit the World Trade Center. And like, and so it was
Oh my
crazy.
God.
And yeah, I mean, I definitely remember, because you were like, oh, like the story was just that it was like a, like an aviation accident. But like, I mean, I remember like that day, and like going home, and turning on the news, and it was immediately, it was like a terrorist attack, and like the story broke like and disseminated real fast about, it was a terrorist attack, and they hijacked these planes, and they had box cutters, and which
Right.
is the craziest thing ever, that like, oh yeah, you can hijack these big, planes with box cutters. It's,
Even
um
I thought that was weird, and I was so young. I was really like, really, box cutters? Like, okay,
uh, I
yeah,
mean, just, that the idea, I mean, I guess, on the one plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, that they like stopped them, let's roll, or whatever,
right.
but like, that like none of these other planes, that, oh yeah, just guys with box cutters, like, I mean, call
But
me crazy, but it
Well,
seems
plane
like
terrorism was like hijacking planes had been a thing for a while.
a
DB
long time.
Cooper did
Yep.
it,
Yep.
in the fucking 70s. And
Yep.
like, you had Muammar Gaddafi and the Lockerbie incident. And the terrorism narrative had been really popular in the 90s. You remember the movie Die Hard? The original
Yep.
Die Hard was about
Yep.
terrorists that take
yeah,
over a building, and then Bruce Willis, the American badass, comes in and takes him out. There was
The
terrorism
New York police,
movies
the
being
NYPD.
created, all I mean,
Yeah.
and
I,
Osama bin Laden had been vilified for a long
yeah, man.
time. So that's why a lot of people immediately suspected Osama bin Laden, who was a member of the Afghan Mujahideen, who had been armed by the CIA, recruited by the CIA, likely a CIA asset. I don't believe there's any documents that directly link him and his name, but there was, hundreds of millions of dollars that poured into the Afghan resistance movement when the Russians took over. I mean, countries have been trying to take over Afghanistan, the Greeks, Alexander the Great. Afghanistan just kicks them out. But and then what was really crazy, the CIA had been looking for bin Laden for so long, and every time the group that was assigned to catch him would narrow, they'd be like, he's right here, we can take him out. The White House or the higher ups, the CIA, would put the axe on it. And in fact, in June 28th, 2001, CNN found Osama bin Laden, and they went in and they interviewed him.
Right.
And
Yep.
yeah, no. So CNN goes in, they interviewed him, and there's a really famous quote from Bill Cooper, the conspiracy radio host at the time, where Bill Cooper just talks about how preposterous that is, that the CIA had been looking for bin Laden for years and years and years, can't find him, and this jackass reporter waltzes in and interviews bin Laden. And Cooper ends that broadcast. He says, whatever they're about to do and blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it for a second. And
Ah,
Bill Cooper was killed 6 weeks after 9/11 in his
okay,
driveway. He was gunned
right.
down by the police. And he was a bit of a he was out there. He was an out there guy, but you know, it's interesting. He was the one that, and President Bill Clinton, I think in 1995, after the Oklahoma City bombing, Bill Clinton put out a memo in the White House that said Bill Cooper is the most dangerous radio host in America, because he was questioning the official account of the Oklahoma City bombing. You know, basically this fertilizer bomb takes out half a building. There's footage of somebody else, you know, in the U-Haul truck with, I forget what that guy's name is, Timothy McVeigh.
McVeigh.
There's somebody else there, and, you know, the FBI just covers everything up. And
Well, and he, you know, if you know anything about Timothy McVeigh, I mean, he was like, he had some crazy dental implants done. I don't know if you knew about that, but yeah, he had you know, a bunch of, you know, implants done. And, you know, we talked a lot about the dental stuff, but, you know, like he is saying that like he was getting, you know, transmissions through his, you know, implants, and, you know, like that's a big part of the story actually. You know, with McVeigh, interestingly.
And
yeah,
there's also
thing.
I was just going to say there's also the sketchy footage of him. What is it? The footage of him in the army in the tank, and he's supposed to be dead by then. I think it is. Have you guys seen that? I'll pull that up.
This
I
is
know
like
there was an
after
FBI
1995.
agent.
After he was supposed to be dead already, they're doing some news report or something at a base, and like in the background, they're in the tank, and just in the background, you see Timothy McVeigh. Let's take a look. But
I know there's two. There's an FBI agent that looks pretty similar to McVeigh that was hired like the next year after he had been executed, and that execution wasn't public. I don't believe there's no footage of it. The public wasn't admitted to it, which they usually are. So, you know, a lot of people think maybe he was switched out or something.
That's yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a lot of intrigue, you know, with you know, and that was, you know, maybe some kind of like dry run. Although, you know, I mean, I think in terms of like what happened at 9/11, you know, there were so many other things that were going on, and you know, like that they had you know, rigged up. I mean, you know, so many different like factors that, you know, that took those buildings down. So what do you, you know, what do you guys think? Like, you know, these were like bombs on the inside, that these were direct energy weapons. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
What, for 9/11?
9/11, yeah.
Man, okay, so the directed energy weapon thing, this is just my own theory. I think that's like a disinformation campaign to discredit people, because if you look at the accounts of people that are pushing this, it's mostly bot accounts, and they're so hostile to all other theories. I think they just want to shape the narrative to get people to talk about fucking space lasers and directed energy weapons. Like, we don't even know. It's just all an assumption. There's no document that says this is what they do. This is what they can do. We have no proof of it. You know, they point to things like the toasted cars, toasted file cabinets, missing structural steel. All that stuff could be explained away with like traditional thermite or things that eat away at metal. I think that the directed energy stuff is a bit of a psyop to change the narrative. I think it most likely was a controlled demolition. You had a bunch of remodeling activity going on in the years leading up to 9/11. They redid the elevator shaft. They had access to all the elevator columns. And then you had all of these art students, like E-Team, Gelatin, B-Thing, that were given free rent in the floors of impact on one of the towers. And they actually removed, I think it was B-Thing, removed the window and like created a balcony.
That was Gelatin. That was their project, was called B Thing. And then the really weird thing about that too is that, you know, and yeah, I think, you know, like it being on the 91st floor, you know, of, I think, the South Tower, and you know, that it was from the 92nd floor above there, you know, everything, you know, not a single survivor, you know, that was like
I'll be right back. I think I got someone at my front door.
Yeah, man.
It's the CIA, dude. They heard
Oh,
you talking.
damn, this guy's done. Oh, he's not coming back.
Yeah,
He's not coming
exactly.
back. Damn.
Shut it down. But no, what's really interesting about that is that so from like another building like across the way that I think it might have been one of the other buildings in the World Trade Center complex, but it was a hotel. Like these guys were having a party and they were like flying a helicopter over to film the bee thing, to film the project, and all of that was being like the party was being hosted, and um the helicopter, was like paid for by this guy named Josh Harris, who was like one of the first internet, like, .com, like multimillionaire guy, in the early days of the internet. And this guy, he did this really weird. Have y'all ever seen this? It's a documentary called We Live in Public. He made it. It's these guys from like the CIA. It was this whole project where he like bought a building in New York and like made people like stay inside, for like 3 weeks, and you could do whatever you wanted to do, and they just like filmed it and put it all on the internet. And anyways, like this Josh Harris guy was so closely involved with the gelatin, like the art, collective, and the 91st floor, like, I don't know, man. Like that part just seems so weird to me. And there are just like, so many like crossovers and ties in with like the intelligence community. And yeah, I agree with you, Adam, that seems like one of the more like plausible, I think, theories of how, they might have had access to staging some of those things in that location.
Well, they had all access construction passes. So, I mean, the building was, the building had its own security. And so these art students would have had passes that would have allowed them access to any point in the building, any structural whatever that they needed. And they were foreign. They weren't Israeli, but they were like Australian and
Austrian.
Austrian.
Yeah.
So,
Austrian.
I mean, they were foreign art students. This was like a lot of them, their only project. In B Thing had a book that they put out, and in it they have sketches of the World Trade Center, and way above them there's a plane, which is interesting. Now, something that I find really, really interesting that I did a lot of research for is there was a whole spy ring, a Mossad spy ring operating in the country at the time. They eventually arrested 200 Israeli art students, and they were going around to like Department of Defense offices, military bases. DEA was a big one because the Mossad had been caught by the DEA, I think, selling drugs in LA. And so they had arrested some Israelis, but they were like knocking on people's doors, trying to sell art. Really, they were, whatever, gathering intelligence. And they had multiple interactions with law enforcement too. And they were living in these Mossad, agents were living in close proximity to the 9/11 hijackers, sometimes in the exact same building or like a block away. This was actually the largest spy ring in American history, the 200. I mean, so right now there's some Chinese that are here that are trying to steal intellectual property from Silicon Valley. There's probably more than 200 Chinese. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's got a fucking Chinese wife, but this was like the largest ring of like people that were connected. The only one that comes close is there's a spy ring called the Duquesne spy ring. And that was in the 1940s, operated by Nazi Germany. There was another spy ring found in the early 2000s that had Russians. It was like 10 Russians. So this spy ring, they were posing as art students. They were selling Zoom copters at malls to give them cover jobs. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the dancing Israeli story.
Sure.
So the dancing Israelis, another part of the spy ring was moving and storage companies. One of them was Urban Moving Systems that employed these dancing Israelis. Very briefly, for people that don't know, this woman was watching the towers burn off her window, saw these people on a van dancing and celebrating the attack, and called the police. And the police later pulled them over and identified them as 5 Israeli nationals, all worked for Urban Moving Systems. And the FBI came and searched Urban Moving Systems, they found it to be a Mossad front company that had little evidence of a legitimate business. I mean, if you think about too, I used to work for a moving and storage company. If you want to move something illegal, whatever, across state lines, moving and storage company is the best. If you're just doing regular trucking, palletized loads, it's very easy to search pallets of something. A household goods shipment, I mean, if you've ever moved anywhere, you load a truck and you Tetris it all in. And so if you bury something in there to find it, they'd have to take all that crap out. So, but these guys that worked for Urban Moving Systems, after they searched Urban Moving Systems, they searched storage units that were associated with the owner, whose name was Dominic Sutter. And they found Zoom copters in the storage units owned by Dominic Sutter, who owned Urban Moving Systems that employed the dancing Israelis. And those Zoom copters were what the members of the Mossad spy ring had been using to sell in mall kiosks. And all of these Israelis that they discovered, like 200 of them, they were all rounded up and they were just put on planes and sent back to Israel. No charges, no nothing. There was a report that came out on Fox News by Carl Cameron and somebody else, and that aired once on Fox, and then they got incredible pressure from the Israeli lobby, the Anti-Defamation League, all that. Fox News actually pulled the story off. You can find it still on YouTube, but it's like a bootleg version of it. Wild.
Crazy. Yeah, man. Thanks for that. That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I've heard a little bit of that stuff, but yeah, I haven't heard all that detail before. That's like you said, it's such a big topic, and there's just so many crazy threads to it that make you just want to kind of throw your hands up, and then you realize, well, that's just part of it. It's just wild, man. It's wild.
Yeah. The van that those guys were driving, the dancing Israelis, they brought a bomb sniffing dog out, which initially alerted to the presence of explosive residue. The FBI took swabs. Initially, it came back as positive, but then later the FBI came out and said, inconclusive, nothing to see here. So, as usual, the FBI just covers up for, deep state crimes. And
oh, and yeah, I mean, whatever, like the explosive, I mean, it would, first of all, it would have, required a lot of explosive, but, there also were like these tabletop exercises that have been going on for like, a couple years, and these like war games that were happening, like, the day of, and like, the day before 9/11 that involved like, airplanes and, like these, like war gaming, these kind of, like terrorist attacks with airplanes and stuff. So, I mean, there like obviously is some kind of like, component to, that was, whether the planes actually, did the damage, there were planes that, that were involved. I mean, there's a lot of like, these days you hear a lot about like, oh, those were really, just like, projections, or, they were like, right. You guys have, heard people say that like, oh, those are just, like CGI or whatever, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that one's a little,
I think that there were planes. It's possible, though, that they were drones, that they were remotely, controlled. I mean, the narrative to me, the narrative to me about like, the box cutters, I don't know that, really like, I don't know that really like makes so much sense. I think that it could have been, very easily that the planes could have been, controlled remotely. It could be that there weren't really passengers on those planes, I mean, things like that. I mean, it's that's hard to know. Like the cell phone, or the airplane phone calls and things like that. Like, how did these phone calls like stay, like on towers when there were so few towers, at the time, like things like that. I mean, it's it's pretty sus. Definitely like the plane, what was it, 70 set, American 77 that flew into the Pentagon, like that's pretty debatable of whether that was like a plane or some kind of other ballistic. I mean,
There's something to that, because I mean, people saw it and they reported it was a plane, but they haven't released any footage, which leads me to believe that it was maybe you could tell something from the footage. Um, Adam cooked. Thanks. You know, what you just said too about the cell phone. You know, you still today you can't make a cell phone call at that altitude.
Right.
And there's even one recording where this woman, she calls her husband, and at the end she says, "Hey babe, I need you to listen very carefully. This plane's been hijacked, blah blah blah." And at the end she says, "It's a frame." And it's a frame, if you couldn't have heard me. But so, and there's also no airplane noise in the background of all of those calls. Now, if you look, Jordan, one time me and you talked about Operation Northwoods, which very briefly was a false flag proposed in the 1960s to do similar things to blame on Cuba. They were going to shoot down airplanes, hijack airplanes, blow up bombs in American cities, blow up boats of Cuban refugees. And one of the things they wanted to do was to simulate a hijacking of an airplane. They were going to hijack an airplane, have it fly. They were going to turn the transponder off, fly it low, and then have another plane come up at the same time. They're going to essentially replace the plane. And, you know, that all the planes on 9/11, they turned their transponders off. And, you know, so, but I mean, you have, I mean, this is, they talked about drone planes in the Operation Northwoods document from 1962. Drone planes in the 1960s. So back then they could do it with radar and stuff. They had to be in close proximity. I think by 2001 they could actually remotely control these planes from further away. But I mean, the technology for drone planes has been there.
For a fact. And that's, you know, I mean, that to me is like, you know, something that, you know, I'm surprised that's not a bigger part of the dialogue, to tell you the truth, because, you know, that makes so much sense, you know. But you know, the Flight 77, I mean, just like the trajectory of the plane, and like, you know, like the videos that there are, you know, with like those real like choppy frames and everything like that, you know, the trajectory of it coming in, you know, at that angle, and you know, like the actual scope of the impact, like it doesn't make sense if that was like a 747, the Pentagon.
Well, that guy, Hanahandro, or whoever he was, he couldn't certify to fly on a single engine Cessna.
Right.
His instructors questioned if he even had a pilot's license in the first place. And this guy that could barely fly, he did an acrobatic 330-degree down spiral corkscrew and then came in just barely grazing the tops of trees. I mean, that's like, to put that into perspective, a single engine Cessna, it'd be like if you couldn't drive a car and you went and hopped in a semi and drove from California to New York. I mean, it's not a commercial airliner is much more difficult to fly than a small little plane like that. And something else that's not talked about either is, do you know how hard it would be to navigate yourself to these targets? I mean, not impossible, but I mean, if you just think about, you take over a plane and now you're flying above the clouds, unless you've got some real navigation training, it's going to be pretty hard to find the Pentagon, you know?
No, absolutely. And
here's that phone call.
And find the Pentagon, much less like find the one area that had been like reinforced for like,
and the one area where they
kept the records
of the $2 trillion that the Pentagon had lost. Yeah.
And where know? Right. And where there were, you know, like a total minimum of people, like, you know, on site in that area due to like the renovation stuff. I mean, it's all, you know, pretty neat that he could get himself right there. Pretty neat.
Pretty neat. Yeah. Okay, let's give this go. I've never heard this, so let's before we think about it, talk about it, or anything, let's give it a listen. I hope this is the whole call. I assume it is. So here we go.
Yeah, it looks like it. It's not
so for long. those not watching, those listening, apparently this is the CC Lyles phone call on United Flight 93 on September 11th, 2001, where you can reportedly hear "It's a frame" at the end. So I believe this is a call to her boyfriend. I think
husband, I believe.
Husband.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We also have the dramatic message left by flight attendant Cece Lyles in her husband's answering machine before briefly talking to him on her cell phone. As she herself is suggesting, we should listen very carefully.
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. Want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that.
We too can notice the absence of the typical background noise heard inside a plane.
I don't know what to say. There's 3 guys. They've hijacked the plane. I'm trying to be calm.
After saying goodbye, she seems to fumble with the headset while she whispers a few more words into the mouthpiece.
I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
End of message.
Let's go back again real quick. I totally heard that.
Mm-hmm.
She's pretty chill
Totally
on the
heard
whole
that.
message, though,
Hold on.
right? Like, hey,
I was
just
gonna
wanted to
say
let you
she
know-
is very like.
Hey, just
I was gonna
wanted to
start
let
right
you
away.
know
Hi,
we got
baby.
hijacked. Like,
Trying to stay calm, baby. What are you having for dinner?
yeah.
End of message.
Even by playing the segment several times, it remains difficult to hear anything different from the words, "It's a frame."
Wow, interesting.
We also have the dramatic message left by flight attendant Cece Lyles in her husband's answering machine before briefly talking to him on her cell phone. As she herself is suggesting, we should listen.
Sorry, I'm trying to close it. There we go. So yeah, I totally heard that. It's funny because if you Google it, what Google tells you is the quote you're referring to stems from a well-known conspiracy theory surrounding a voicemail left by CC Ross on 9/11. The misinterpretation in the background of the recording. Some listeners claimed they heard a faint whisper that sounded like "it's a frame." The reality, according to audio forensic experts and the 9/11 Commission report. Okay, so if the 9/11 Commission report, so this is obviously a complete fact. The 9/11 Commission report says this phrase is misinterpretation of background noise, static, or other cockpit utterances. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also if you Google, one of my favorite things to Google is can jet fuel melt steel beams?
Okay.
It'll say something. It'll be like, well, while jet fuel can't melt steel beams, it can weaken them, and just something similar to that.
It can weaken them, but it's not like anything like falls over. It's not like anything like goes except right, like vertically down into its own footprint, completely. So
it's like, no, jet fuel cannot melt steel beams, and then it talks about the temperatures, and then it's like, however, steel does not necessarily need to melt to cause a catastrophic structural collapse.
Yeah. Well, and so the problem with that is, they say that the floor's pancaked and, one floor slammed into the next and it brought the whole building down. But, buildings are designed with structural redundancies. They're designed to, all of the structure under the plane impact site was fine. What should have happened if you think a collapse, it should have just fallen off. Buildings that get hit with stuff, projectiles, whatever, they fall over. They fall on their side. There's part of the building that's still recognizable. Go build a tower out of Legos and then smack the top with a hammer and see if the entire thing just goes straight down. I mean, that's just not the way physics works. And that's what all of these architects and engineers at A9/11 Truths were coming out and saying is, this isn't how buildings behave when they collapse. Especially Building 7, which just had a couple small fires in it, and then it falls completely into its own footprint.
Yeah,
that one definitely should have fallen to the side or fallen over or or whatever.
or not fallen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't have fallen at
I
all.
wonder
Yeah.
what the plan really was for building 7, because what we saw, I think maybe they anticipated more stuff hitting it from the collapse of one of the towers.
They
And
must have.
people say United 93 was supposed to hit it. Now, I think United 93, I
okay.
think what happened with United 93 was exactly what was supposed to happen, because it gives you the story of American resistance and these people fighting back against these terrorists.
That's what I think too.
Right, and you've got the recording of the, let's roll. I mean, it's just
America. Fuck
Fuck
yeah.
yeah.
Going in to save the motherfucking day. Yeah.
yeah. No, I definitely, think Adam's, spot on about that. That's that was really important to the narrative, and like getting people like galvanized,
I mean, without it,
about
like,
heroics, like,
yeah, because like the aftermath stuff aside, like with George Bush and the shovel and all the bullshit, and the highlighting of the bravery of firefighters and all that, stuff related to that. Like, it was I remember, like, even though I was young, I remember it was very sad. It was very gruesome. It was very horrendous. So, like, to not have like somewhat of a heartwarming, courageous story thrown in there, to that extent that most people could kind of latch on to, I think it definitely was a vehicle to drive the emotions of some of these people, for sure.
Well, man, so this would have been a few months after 9/11. We actually, where I lived, me and my parents got a copy of the movie they made about that, United 93.
I saw that. Yeah.
Some organization mailed it to us and said, "Here's this movie. It talks about American bravery, blah blah blah." It said in the letter that came with it, it said, "Watch this with your friends and your relatives and your neighbors. Pass it on to other people." Yeah, it was telling us, like, basically to spread this story on the
you like received this unsolicited, basically.
Yes, it came in the mail.
What? Weird.
Yeah. And so think about that. Like, who's paying for that? I mean, those fucking movies aren't free, right? DVDs were $20 in 2002. So,
that's right.
Okay, you buy them in bulk, you get a discount. But I mean, still, you're talking about a huge effort to mail them. And we had no idea. We were like, check it out. A movie showed up to the house. Like,
we don't even have Netflix.
Yeah. That's wild, man.
Yeah, that Netflix. That was Blockbuster days, man.
Yeah. All right. So that's a little family story. I've got a really crazy family story if you want to hear it too. So
nice.
My mother, she would do like she was an author before she retired. She was an author and would do a lot of like corporate speaking engagements and stuff like that. And she had an appointment on the morning. She was in New York, like on the morning of September 11th. She had an appointment at Morgan Stanley, which was on, I don't know, the 90 something floor of one of the buildings. And she was like on her, getting ready to go. She had like, I don't know, maybe like a 10:30, 11 o'clock meeting, at like their, corporate, like executive offices in the World Trade Center. And, like the thing happened. So obviously like the meetings didn't happen. And, at that point, like you couldn't get, everything was shut down in New York. Like, you couldn't get a flight out. You couldn't get like a Amtrak train, out. So she was like stranded in New York for, I mean, at least about a week, something like that. And this was like, in the days before, like it was real easy to, just book travel on the internet. She had a travel agent. And so her travel agent, basically was like, after about a week, was like, yeah, okay, so I can get you out of New York. And my family lived in Atlanta, and at the time, and it was I could get you on a train to Greensboro, North Carolina, and then get you a rental car like to drive like, 4 hours, down to Atlanta from Greensboro, North Carolina. And she said, but I have another client that like, needs to get to Atlanta also. And can he like share the car
Planes,
with you?
trains, and automobiles.
He's gonna be on the train with you. And can he like share your rental car, like to Atlanta? And she's just like, I don't care. I just want to like get home. It turns out that the guy, and I don't know if my mother was targeted or like what was going on. The guy who got like put in the car with her from Greensboro, North Carolina to Atlanta, Georgia was Lynn Buchanan, the guy who, I don't know if you know that name, but the guy who like Men Who Stare at Goats is like based off of like the George Clooney character. Like,
What?
yeah. Like this,
What?
yes, dude, this like army like remote viewing crazy thing. My mom gets home at like 3 a.m. and she's like, okay, I don't know what just happened. Like, but she was getting like psyop by this dude for like 4 hours in the car, just being, and it was all real stuff, but she was freaked out. And I had never heard of remote viewing or anything like this. But this is like, like a top level operator. So why was he not able to get, so his character, but it's a real guy. He's still alive. His name is
I
Len
know.
Buchanan.
That's from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, fuck,
right.
is it?
But
shit. He looks the same though. He looks the same though. Where is it?
But
Why'd they show that? What the hell?
But here's the crazy part about it is like, why if this guy was like high level, army intelligence, how could he not get like on a plane or on get his own car? Like, why did they put him in a car for 4 hours with my mother, who was supposed to have a meeting at Morgan Stanley to like psyop her about remote viewing and stuff? Like, I don't know. It's the weirdest thing, and that's the story, man. And
Maybe they
so
were trying to
wild,
see if
dude.
she missed her meeting because of something she knew.
I mean, I genuinely think that that they were doing something, and there doesn't seem like another good reason like why this guy couldn't have used some connection that he was having to go through like this like weird travel agent to like get, I don't know, man. It's really crazy, man. So I it's been 25 years. I still haven't been able to figure that one out.
That's a great story, man.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of coincidences and things around 9/11. Fucking NORAD was doing a training exercise at the time. So when the reports of the attacks came in, they thought it was part of the training exercise.
Ooh.
There was the New York police or someone in New York City emergency management had set up an auxiliary command center where they were like doing training on emergency response. That was basically this command center ready to go the morning of 9/11. And they just, oh, hey, we've got this thing ready to go. We can use it now to manage this emergency that happens to be here. So there's a lot of, you look at President Bush. Where was he? He was reading to school children in Florida, who he had just won a contentious election, ballots and recounts. And, it was like 2 weeks before the official result of the Florida election was in. So here he is in a swing state at essentially a campaign stop, reading to school children. He finds out about the attack. He doesn't leave. He continues reading to these kids. Then they leave the school. The Secret Service makes a wrong turn. They go down the wrong way for like 20 minutes, double back, come back the way. He's on Air Force One, then finally on the phone trying to like manage the situation. The phone keeps cutting out. Meanwhile, who's the person running everything? Fucking Dick Cheney, who a lot of people think was the real architect, or, George Bush was just a dumb country bumpkin. Dick Cheney was the real like brains behind the operation.
Bush
I know
was-
Habsburg. Yeah, so I know his
don't
dad. I know the
mean,
CIA.
you know.
Bush was also
he was a good actor. He made people think he was a country bumpkin, but no, here's the thing. You're talking about like his calls though cutting out, but Homegirl, made perfect calls with the it's a frame, like the from the
Yeah.
plane, a
Hey,
commercial plane, they were making calls, but Bush's calls on Air Force One were cutting out. Like it's just it's over the top, but
yeah,
sure.
It's like Nixon calling
The moon.
the moon, on the bat phone. Like, oh God.
Yeah, except that really happened.
Oh yeah.
That's for our next episode,
Yeah.
Mister.
I see you got the room 237 thing up in the background there.
What's that? Yeah.
237. That's from the Shining. That's the
Yeah.
room number people point to, the distance from the Earth to the moon. If I think, right? Is that
Is
the
it?
connection?
Is that there's a bunch of connections.
I believe so. 237
Million.
miles. Yeah, something like
It's got to
that.
be million, right?
Yeah.
Something.
No, it's just like 237 miles. That's a long.
200.
way.
It's got
That's a long distance, man. You don't know how long a mile is. It's a mile's pretty long.
yeah.
Man. A mile's pretty long.
Miles pretty long, dude. Well, I mean, it can't be like 237,000 because that's not that far. It's got to be like 237 million.
I think
on
it's
average
2 million.
It says here it's on average 237 away from Earth. So
Yeah. Well, there you go.
well, there you go, buddy.
There you go.
We were both right. Yeah, I love my Kubrick though. So, but yeah, I'm excited for our moon talk and stuff. We spoke with Bart, and I've been trying to read some books before our talk. I've been reading his book again, and then I read Bill Casing's book. We Never Went to the Moon, which is really good. And then I just got what's his name? I think his name's Ralph Renee. NASA mooned. What is it? NASA mooned the Earth or something like that. NASA mooned America. NASA mooned America, I think, and that's a pretty reputable one as well. So, yeah, I'm excited to have some chats about that.
Me too, man. I was actually a moon skeptic as well. I thought that the moon landing was fake, like, of course, just like 9/11. But until I researched for a video I made, and just the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, I think we actually went. So I actually I'd been a skeptic my whole life, essentially.
Nice.
Since I was a teenager.
Well, that'll be fun, man. That'll be good. We'll definitely have fun, and we'll take our time and kind of map out a bunch of different ways with that one. Because
I thought you were being tongue in cheek when you said that it happened. Okay, I'll be interested, for that conversation, Adam.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I mean, so
we're gonna run a train on you, Adam.
No,
I'm
you
just kidding,
won't.
bro. I'm just kidding, bro. No, I'm just.
It's what, I definitely see why people think that it was fake, because
I'm here to learn.
everything else that the government has done, and all of the lies, all of the propaganda, you look at the sentiment around that time. I mean, it makes sense that we would want. I mean, we were losing the space race bad. Like the Soviets were, whooping our ass with these ex-German scientists. Do you know why that the Soviets?
That's the
were
reason
whooping our ass?
why I think. Sorry, what?
So I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I cut you off, so it's my bad.
The reason that the Soviets were whooping our ass so much in the space race was because they could do things. They could send people up, and if they died, they just wouldn't report on it. And all the stories of the lost cosmonauts. There was, I think it was with you, Jordan. We talked about the guy that fell from space.
Yeah.
There's things of people picked up radio signals of something drifting farther and farther away, saying SOS. So the Soviets would just send people up there. They would fucking die. And we couldn't do that in America because it would be a national embarrassment. The media would report on it. That secret society speech JFK gave, we are opposed to secret societies, secret oaths, secret proceedings. He goes on to talk about we're opposed by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. It relies on guerrillas by night. People say, oh, he's talking about the CIA. No, he was talking about communism. He was talking about the Soviet Union. He said the Soviet Union has no secrets that the things that they do ever published. Everything's buried. They have complete. And if you think about how scary that would have been, like they have control over industry, control over the press, control over the citizens. So like there was a real fear in government that this thing could defeat America. And he's actually asking in that speech, he's asking the press to censor themselves. You know, people say he's trying to, what he's saying is, in times of war, the press has self-censored. They have not reported on things that the enemy could use as intelligence. And he's saying, we are at war. We're in a Cold War. Please be careful about what you report on. So it's very interesting. People always use that speech to, you know, spin certain narratives, but really he's just talking about how shitty communism is.
Yeah, those sound bites like really, you know, belie what that whole speech, you know, actually is saying. I mean, it's it get that, you know, that gets used a lot and trotted out, but you know, it's, you know, the rest of the speech isn't like that at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I use it. I mean, I used it in one of my intros. I mean, because you have JFK saying we
Right.
are opposed by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. That's just a great quote.
Right.
Yeah.
From
Fair
JFK.
and you know, we're opposed to, you know, secret societies, secret. I mean, it's a great soundbite, you know.
It is,
like,
yes.
you gotta love it.
Gotta.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of those like mimetic things where, you know, and that's, you know, that's kind of like the level of like discernment, you know, that we're at, is like, you know, people can use anything, you know, put that spooky TikTok, you know, music behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so I wanted to say this too. Carlyle Group that
Yeah.
on 9/11. So on 9/11, George Bush Sr. and Frank Carlucci, former deputy CIA director, and James Baker, the former Secretary of State, were at an investor conference for the Carlyle Group, along with Osama bin Laden's brother. The Carlyle Group was a consortium of military and defense contractors that went from 14 billion in assets under management pre 9/11 to 277 billion today. So they really benefited from this war on terror, all this stuff. But something I found out just the other day was Carlyle Group at one point owned EG&G, which was the defense contractor that Bob Lazar worked for in the 80s when he allegedly reverse engineered those alien craft at Groom Lake. So Carlyle Group has been, you know,
Wow.
I found that connection really fascinating, that they owned EG&G.
Crazy, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think oh, sorry, dude. Brain fart. Keep going.
Yeah, well, that was so George Bush Sr. was a senior advisor to that group, Carlyle Group. The Bin Ladens had invested in it, the Bin Laden family.
Yeah.
They had invested in it early, and they, you know, interesting that the Bin Ladens benefited financially from the war on terror that Osama bin Laden started. Of course, you had Halliburton, Dick Cheney's former company, that, you know, they've got, I think, 40 billion in government contracts. And if you look at those contracts, there was talk of this at the time. It was like they were paid like $27 million to haul 50 loads of propane from Kuwait to Iraq. I mean, they just raped the government.
Yeah.
At some points during the Iraq War, there were more military and defense contractors than there were U.S. military. So we would have had a draft in the U.S. had it not been for these defense contractors. Like if it was like Vietnam, in Vietnam, the military did everything. The military shuttled all the propane and all the gas, and they did everything. And if we hadn't had these defense contractors, we would have had to have had a draft in the U.S. Really crazy. And then these defense contractors end up charging the American government out the ass, you know, money that we're debt that we're still paying on, you know, in the form of inflation. You know, that inflates our money supply when we have to print more and take on this debt. And people bitch about groceries going up. It's like, well, we're paying for all those, shooting all those. You know, I don't want to. I don't want to say anything that'll get the video demonetized, but yeah, no, we're paying for those wars now through debt and through inflation. And I mean, geez, dude, Warren Buffett used to say in the early 2000s, you have to look at debt in relation to GDP. He'd said American GDP is high. We have debt, yes, but now the federal government brings in $5 trillion a year and we're 40 trillion in debt. So, I mean, that'd be like if you bring in 100,000 a year and you're 800,000 in debt and you're continuing to borrow more. Interest payments alone on the national debt are 15% of the federal budget, which is equal to defense spending, which we as Americans spend as much as the next 6 countries, Russia, China, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia combined. So here pretty soon that interest payment's going to get more and more. And we're going to have, it's going to get rough in America in the next probably 30 years. We're going to have austerity measures. I don't even know how you say it. Austerity measures. Austerity, budget cuts, and they're going to raise taxes and reduce government services, and that's going to fucking crash the economy. It's going to suck, and no one's doing anything about it in the government. Thomas Massie tried, and they fucking got rid of him.
Yeah, so let's before we wrap it up, let's get into that a little bit. So obviously Thomas Massie lost on, I think it was Tuesday. He lost his Republican primary election. He won't be advancing to the general election in November. The winner was the Trump-endorsed challenger, Ed. I don't know how you say it. Ed Gallrain?
Yeah,
Ed
something
Gallrain.
like that.
So he won the Republican nomination. The margin, with most votes counted, he led Massie 54.4% to 45.6%. And yeah, Massie conceded the race. And kind of shocked, personally. I don't know, man. Kind of shocked on that one. I didn't think, I don't know if Trump's endorsement had anything to do with it. I don't know how, Trump is still Trump, but I don't know. Well, any thoughts, gentlemen? What, Adam, maybe you want to start the ball rolling a bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Trump he posted a thing on Twitter that said 19-0 in the primaries. All the candidates that Trump endorsed got through. He defeated everyone that he was against. What it really is
crazy. It seems crazy, doesn't it?
Well, so the hardcore Republicans in this country still support Trump, the MAGA Republicans, and they'll do whatever he says. These are the boomers that are watching Fox News. Fox News has been shitting on Massie for the last 18 months. He didn't vote for Trump's big, beautiful bill. He's went against Trump on a few other things. So they've kind of been shaping a narrative of Massie is not a true Republican. He's aligning with the Democrats. You, of course, had this was the most expensive congressional primary in U.S. history. You had them spend 15 to 20 million on Gallrain. That 95% of that came from AIPAC, Republican Jewish Coalition, Miriam Adelson, Paul Singer, and John Paulson, all pro-Israeli donors. Israel really wanted to defeat him because first he advocates for no more foreign aid to Israel, but he also, was the reason that these Epstein files got released. He drafted a discharge petition. He got 3 Congress women to sign on to it: Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I'm blanking on the Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert. No, Kana was a Democrat, but Marjorie Taylor Greene got her political career destroyed over this thing that the whole country wanted. Lauren Boebert, the president, tweeted, "Anyone want to run in this district? We could use somebody else here." And, and then Massie, he got defeated as well. So really crazy that we had essentially a foreign country come in with super PAC money and, in conjunction with Fox News propaganda, unseated Thomas Massie. I know there was a lot of talk about the mail-in ballots and maybe there's election fraud and this and that. I'm not too keen to jump on that. I really do think it was the Fox News propaganda machine against these hardcore MAGA boomers that just did him in. Now, I think we could maybe see Massie run for president, which he kind of hinted at during his concession speech, which that would be incredible to see a Massie 2028 ticket
for president.
I personally, I think that that's like what this is all like set up for. I think that this was, this was like, an engineered outcome, and that this is like something, to kind of like, galvanize people, because, like he's incredibly popular, across the country. Not just in his district. He's obviously really popular in his district. And I think that like, that this is, I think that I mean, I see what you're saying, Adam. I mean, that there is like, pro, Trump and, propaganda on, mainstream network news and stuff like this. But I don't know that the numbers really like play that out, and that any amount of money from any source, really, would sway that outcome. To me, I think that what we're seeing is like something that was, pretty much scripted, and that, like he's going to be like the next, this is going to be like the, like the next incarnation of, whatever movement, Tea Party, MAGA, populist, whatever. And I think that, my perspective is that, Massie, that there's more to it than, than meets the eye. I mean, he was a DeMolay. He is, so he's like a fully initiated, Freemason from, like his high school days, right? He's a
Right.
he's a senior level DeMolay, and he went to MIT, which was, not just like the institution that, Jeffrey Epstein, was deeply involved in on so many levels. But this is really where like cybernetics, comes from. This is where Norbert Wiener, was, like, a professor, when he described like what cybernetics are. Thomas Massie's work there was actually like, to develop these like haptic, interfaces for in virtual reality, to make like, like virtual reality more, like tactile and, like, operable. So this is like a, this is a, real like transhumanist leaning, kind of technology that he is involved in. And so I think that I think there's a lot more to it. And I think that he's, involved in things that, are more than meets the eye, that there is this like, Masonic, affiliation, that there is this, he made a fortune, developing, like I said, technology that relates to, cybernetics and transhumanism, and
Thomas Massie did.
yeah, his company is called Sensible, right? And he sold it for $30 million. That's, that's how he like made his fortune. And it was all for making like tactile haptics for in virtual reality, so that like when people are in like a virtual space, you can like physically feel objects with your hands. That was, yeah. And they, what's that?
And soon it'll be your dick too.
Oh,
Right.
that'll be the number one use.
But yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
of course. Well, they're using it actually, this has been like incorporated into like defense technologies and things like this. It's broadly applicable, but this is going back now, since the 90s. And I think that when you scrutinize and you look at it, like there's a little bit more to him. And yeah, I mean, like obviously the guy is like based and this and that, but like he's also a politician. And like everything really kind of changed. Well, I mean, he was like courting Trump, and like all of this, and getting his endorsements, like even after Trump like did warp speed speed and, like the lockdowns and this and that, I mean, and then, like that's the kind of the nature of controlled opposition, is that like you kind of, switch back and, you like
Interesting.
he changed his appearance. His wife died in a really, strange circumstances. He remarried this other one. Like he looks like a totally different person now. Might be on Ozempic. Like, I don't know, but I just think that, my take on the guy is, that there's a little bit more to it. And I really think that this, the outcome of this election, this primary was to like set him up and to like get people like more like galvanized, their support for him. Like they, feel like, oh, we got screwed, we the people got screwed. This is our guy. And I genuinely think that like he's going to be, the president in 2028, and maybe that's good, maybe that's like I said, a controlled opposition type of thing, for a predetermined outcome. But
I never thought of that. I'll have to look into that stuff you were talking about. Now, I do think, to that same point, it is interesting. There's a lot of talk of anti-Semitism around now. Everyone calls like criticism of Israel anti-Semitism. And I was thinking about it the other day. It almost seems like Netanyahu and the Israelis are like leaning into it. Like,
absolutely.
if you remember when all those influencers came out there, this would have been right before TikTok was sold, right after Charlie was murdered. They had this big push. Everyone was saying, $7,000, checks in the mail, $7,000. Netanyahu had all those influencers out, and he's sitting there talking to them, and he goes, he refers to him as class. He's like, now, what's the most important thing? Class? Like, it just, like, if he had a PR guy, which I'm sure he does, that PR guy would have said, that's the worst thing you could do is drag a bunch of American influencers out to Israel, refer to them as class. Like he's the teacher and so I almost wonder if Netanyahu's leaning into that. And the point isn't necessarily to win the propaganda battle in the US, Europe, Canada. That's already lost. The point maybe is to actually stir up some anti-Semitism to galvanize support amongst Jews, because then they can say, look, everyone hates you. Everyone's against you. Everyone's, they're posting all these terrible things online, because that is a side effect of it. People do get genuinely racist with this stuff. And, if you just think about if you were Jewish and you saw that, like, how would you feel? You'd be like, got to double down on supporting Israel now. And I think maybe that's the point.
Well, and how, and to that point, like, how does propaganda work? Like, is it more effective to give like, influencers money to say like Israel is good, or in a way, to have that like, degree of controlled opposition, and like be paying people to say like things that, would, generate anti-Semitism or whatever, right, that like make it that accelerate that, that make this kind of like double-sided thing of so is all the propaganda like pro-Israel, or is there also propaganda on the other side, to accelerate, this, it's a dialectic, right? You have problem, reaction, solution, right? The end goal is, the same, like you said, if it's to get, people like on the defensive and ultimately like, make more war, does it not make sense that you're like fueling both sides to come to a common endpoint, that's been predetermined.
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of go back and forth with this on my head too. I think Nick Fuentes is controlled opposition. I think he is,
for sure, dude.
Because I did actually the reason me and Jordan hooked up was because I posted like a little mini documentary thing about all the weird things about Fuentes. He incited the riot January 6th, and he's like the only influencer that's not prosecuted for that or charged with anything. He received $250,000 in Bitcoin like a week before, and he went on a date with a gay furry, right? Like this guy live streamed it. He was this Australian. There's also other things too. Like he played gay porn on his stream one time. Fuentes did, and there's just so much weird stuff with him that if he truly was this like menace to power, if he truly was so against, I mean, the Israeli lobby is one of the most powerful in the world. Like there's a lot of money behind it, and it's like if they really wanted to crush this kid, they could. And I almost wonder if he's put there just to, I don't know, like someone described him once as not a jester, but like it's a word for like a chaos agent. Like maybe that's it, a chaos agent.
Chaos agent. Yeah,
like
man.
he just kind of lights a match and runs away and watches everything burn down.
And then
he
points from a
attacks
distance.
everyone.
Yeah.
He attacks everyone. He brings everyone down. It's like I used to kind of like him and I liked what he would say, but it's like after just watching him bash on everyone, like it doesn't matter who it is. And now he's coming out and he's saying vote Democrat. Like he's gone.
Yeah. Oh, he's flipped big time, buddy. Oh, for sure.
Like
sure, he's flipped big time. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that, and I definitely think him. I think that like he's like kind of he's definitely like an easy person, to either like or to hate, like people, like feel strongly about him one way or the other, right? I mean, he has like this personality. He's funny, like I mean, he's articulate. He's a young guy, he's a different generation, and he's relatable. He's also like in so many ways like despicable, and and I think that like he's he's a character. Alex Jones is a character. Like all these, these people
Tucker,
Tucker, Candace,
they're
right. These are like manufactured personas. And to whatever degree, like everybody that we see, I think, in the public eye, like is including politicians. And, I think that a lot of this, like I was saying, is, it's made, it's made for our consumption. And we're supposed to react in certain ways. These are like predetermined things, and that they're fed to each of us individually, based on like the algorithms like are so sophisticated that they can see like our personalities, from what we consume, what we like, what we everything that we say and are overheard by the speakers on our phone. I mean, we are like being force fed the content that we're getting, based on like who we are at this point. So like it's getting tailored to you. So like whoever you're seeing and how they're presenting that person to you is like tailored to you. So
yeah, definitely an echo chamber on social media, and that's
Absolutely.
been a problem for a while. You think that there's no way that someone on the other side could have a rational thought or opinion. You think that like everyone thinks they're idiots. Same with the left and the right. And really, we sit here and argue about these social issues. We sit here and argue about things like abortion and bathrooms and gay rights, and it's like these social issues, that's not what's really driving. It doesn't. Bathrooms are not why your groceries cost more. Gay rights isn't why the home price has doubled over the last 5 years or whatever. It's like, while we sit here and argue about all this bullshit, and if you remember 2008, there was a real dialogue after the housing collapse where people, on the left were like, hey, we're the 99%. Fuck you. We want our money back. Outside picketing outside Wall Street. Because the government just handed hundreds of billions of dollars, if I remember right, to these banks. And then on the right, you had the Tea Party movement, people saying we need to stop spending so much in government. And I think that really scared them. I think they were like, holy shit. And so then like Habsburg, like you said, that's where you get all these dumb little pointless social arguments. And
Culture
it
war.
plays to everyone's emotions. And we just sit there and bicker back and forth about it. It's like, it really doesn't matter, these things, at the end of the day. If someone has an abortion, it doesn't really affect you. You think it does, but really maybe let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about economic policy, foreign policy, these wars. No, it's all
Well, and I
bathrooms.
mean, and it's interesting because we say this, and the bathroom thing it's a mind fuck, right? Like, because everybody's got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
This is going to be like this
Except Kim
fundamental.
Jong-un.
Nice.
But the thing, like, with abortion, let's say, like what people aren't talking about, like, when it really gets down to it, is like, what really is that not about, like, eugenics? Is that not I mean, it's people think like it's a question of, like, morality, of like, we have like a religious issue with this, or this is about, like, women's rights. But is it not about, like, culling certain genetic populations, and getting people to, like, voluntarily sterilize themselves? Like, we're talking about, like, a eugenic population control effort that, like, isn't being framed in that way. It's being framed as this, like, moral issue of religious versus atheist, or men versus women, or whatever. Not like the social engineering elite eugenic class versus the rest of the people that they see as inferior. So
Well, I know there was some undercover work done where, I don't know if it was O'Keefe or who it was, but someone went out to, like, one of these, like, abortion summits, and they started talking to people about, like, buying body parts. And these people were like, "Oh yeah, I could get you this many hearts. I could get you this," man. Like, they were, like, laughing about it and stuff. So I think that plays into it a little bit.
that's definitely another aspect. Absolutely.
This material that comes out of it. And on the other side too, on the pro-life side, if you think about it, for a conglomerate like, BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard, what would a person born be worth to them? Because every person born, you're going to spend $250,000 to 300,000, I don't know what the number is, raising them as the parent. And then once they go out into society, they're going to be getting a job, they're going to be buying things, they're going to be contributing to the economy that BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street all have 5-10% stake in everything. So it's like, for every person born, they're worth a few million in the eyes of these conglomerates. And so that might be, on the pro-life side, one of the things that's kind of tugging that way. It's like, hey, everyone that we can keep and get them born, that's a couple million, in our pocket. So
And that's a good point too.
I
But I
wonder
mean,
about that.
I tend to agree that, like, these things are largely, like, framed in like a cultural way that is meant to distract us from what the,
Oh, for
like,
sure.
bigger, more uh universal kinds of issues really are. And like, people as a mass, as a populace, versus like the elite, very few, social engineer, parasite class, whatever you call it, right? And it is really interesting, like you said, you did have at that time, and who knows, like, to what degree those movements were, like, infiltrated or astroturfed. But yeah, you had Occupy and you had Tea Party, and really, kind of saying the same things, in different ways. It went away, like,
Yeah.
after 2012 ish, like, that was gone, or it started morphing into something else, that ultimately became, like, MAGA, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, because when you do that, you take away the downsides of business. Like, there always has to be a risk versus reward calculation for businesses and corporations. And when you take away the risk, oh, we'll just get bailed out by the government if anything bad happens. That leads to I don't know what the exact words are, but it leads them to make decisions that they wouldn't otherwise. And a lot of people think in 2008 we just kind of kicked the can down the road. And whenever that comes home to roost, it might be, as I said, national debt's 15% of the federal budget is just paying the national debt down. Part of that was those bailouts. Part of that was the Iraq war or Afghanistan too. So it's like, we could be seeing here pretty soon, the consequences of that we'll all have to deal with.
And definitely like one of the consequences, and I think that this was like intentional to the housing market collapse, and the way that like these loans would be structured, and was that like it's become much harder for individuals to get financing for homes. And like some of this is like it needs to be that way, because you can't be giving these like subprime mortgages to people that are unqualified and things like this. But what it's really doing is making it so like BlackRock and Vanguard and these companies can buy up residential real estate and become landlords, and like prevent people from owning homes, because they're now like prohibitive policies that that make it hard for normal people to be able to get home loans. So I think that's that was an intended consequence. So
Well, I know I lived in a trailer park that was sold twice in 5 years, and now I live in the town I live in. Apartment buildings have been sold. My friend lives in an apartment building that's been sold 4 times over the last 5 years. It's like and that's like the definition of a bubble too. Like that's what, you're selling to flippers. Flippers sell to flippers, sell, and then it's like eventually someone's left holding the bag. And I think that's what we're seeing with these, big conglomerates buying like BlackRock, like State Street, buying up apartment complexes, raising rents. I think we are headed for some sort of a crash. When and how, I don't know, but it's a dangerous ride we're on.
no, I mean we're definitely at a point where there is it's a lot harder to buy and own a property than it has been in a long time, and that there is a major consolidation in residential real estate happening at the top. And so I think that that's going to be a real big problem. You mentioned trailer parks, and like, dude, until pretty recently, I didn't realize like how big of a business that is, with like corporate ownership of trailer parks. I mean, that is big money. And that is like something I really did not understand until pretty recently.
It's perfect because they don't do it's you pay lot rent. And so they do nothing. They literally do nothing. The lot you have to pay them, and it's like fucking $300 sometimes just to rent the lot that your trailer sits on.
And they can have hundreds and hundreds of lots in these bigger, I mean thousands in some of these places.
Yeah.
And the people like own their home or whatever, but they don't own the property that it sits on. So
yeah. And then if you want to move it, if you want to move a 20, 30-year-old trailer, I've heard it's very difficult. There's pictures online of people doing it with U-Hauls, but to do it properly, you've got to get like permits. You've got to get a company it's really expensive. So even if you buy a trailer in a trailer court, you're essentially locked into continuing to pay this lot rent. If you want to move it out to a fucking property you have, well, it's cheaper to just demolish the thing and put a new trailer out there. They're not built that well.
Yeah, no, it's a racket, dude. And I didn't understand like the economics of like the corporate ownership, and why that's become like a very popular investment for these large firms is the trailer park. I had no idea.
Well, and where I lived, we came in, and when I first started living there were people like on Social Security, fixed incomes, that had to move out because these corporations, this corporation took over and they raised everyone's lot rent and they just couldn't afford it.
Dude, I was literally talking to a lady. She was driving me, like in an Uber, over here in Medford week before last, and she was telling me she sold her house to the city of Medford under like eminent domain. The city wanted her property. They cashed her out, and she was like, okay, I'll go buy like a trailer in a trailer park. And she said that like she's paying something like $900 a month in like her fees and everything. That's like a straight up mortgage.
Yeah, man.
She has her trailer paid off, but like 900 straight up, $900 a month, you know, to like stay there, you know, with the lot fees and then her property tax, or you know, what, however they charge it. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked.
Yeah. The
It's
only thing that
it's an
really
insane amount of money.
Yeah, they just maintain like the road and the water line and the gas line and
Yep.
the sewer lines.
Exactly.
So it's pretty low. You have to mow your own shit.
Yep.
You know.
Dude, this is exactly what this lady was telling me, and it just like it was blowing my mind.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
trailers used to be relatively economical, but not any. Like it's not really worth it anymore. And you know, the only cool thing is like you have a little bit of privacy. You know, right now I'm in an apartment. You know, I got people all around. I can hear them moving around. That kind of sucks, but you don't have that with a trailer. But there's other issues too. Like it gets really fucking cold in the winter. You know, shit gets fucking raccoons get underneath it and they'll start living there. Cats will have kittens underneath your trailer. You know.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, like I mean it's one thing where, you know, if you have like a trailer that you're like towing and you're like traveling with it, but it's like fixed, it's, you know, fixed into that spot, you know? I mean, it's not you know, mobile in the sense that it's really that mobile, you know. So.
Yeah, the place I lived, they would cut the hitches off too. So that if you wanted to move your trailer out, you had to weld a new hitch on and, you know, just make it more of a barrier.
On. Really?
Yeah.
That's greasy.
That was like a requirement for
I
the
mean,
community.
so they would bring the trailers in. They would buy brand new trailers. They would kick these people out that had been living there. They would demolish their 1975 Condor or whatever was there, and then they would bring in a new modular trailer that cost, you know, $25,000, whatever, brand new, super shitty build. They would chop the hitch off and then they would lease it to you.
Damn.
So you were responsible for the fucking all the appliances, all the maintenance, everything you were responsible for on top of paying them lot rent. And then if you moved out and you didn't fulfill your contract or whatever, like you like forfeited your equity. So then they would turn around and sell it to somebody else. And then they, you know what I mean? So it's a really, like you said, it's a really great business model, you know, if you just like to fuck people out of money.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, I mean, it's something that you know, these like big, you know, private equity firms are like really honing in on, is, you know, what I've realized, that it is like a highly sought after investment for these groups. So.
Yeah. For sure.
Man.
Well, guys, I guess we'll wrap her up there. I guess this seems like a good time. This was a good chat, as always, and obviously, I'm looking forward to our next chat as well. Like we were talking about, I'll be in touch, and we'll, if you're down to book that next week, we'll set it up, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, man, always a good time with you, man. Thanks for coming on. Before you go, man, please let everyone know where they can find you and find your work. And
yeah, my main,
you were telling us about your great social media stuff, so make sure to pump that out as well.
Yeah, so The Truth Desk, at The Truth Desk on YouTube, Instagram. I'm just at Truth Desk on like Facebook and X. So either Truth Desk or The Truth Desk. If you search it, I'm the first one that comes up. There's some Indians now that are taking my username I saw on YouTube.
Whoa.
They're Truth Desk 125 and stuff. Yeah, they're
what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah, you'll see my Truth logo. My Truth logos on all my socials, and yeah, go check them out. I've been putting out some shorts and some longer form stuff. I just started a new, almost like a podcast on my YouTube channel, just kind of like a Tim Dillon show kind of thing, getting into that. So
good for you, buddy. Right on. I'll check that out.
Yeah, well, cool, it's a lot easier to shoot and edit than an hour long regular video.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's great, buddy. Keep up the great work, man. And yeah, we'll be in touch to get you back. And I'm excited, looking forward to our next talk. But yeah, man, all the best to you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. It's always fun to chat with you, man.
Oh, see, let you know. You good,
yeah,
Adam?
For sure, man. I think you guys are cutting out a little bit on my end, but
Oh, okay. Well, all the best, buddy, and we'll talk soon, and we'll see you. We'll see you sometime next week or so.
Right on, man.
Okay. Peace, brother. All right, guys. Well, that was a good talk. I think, yeah, I always enjoy our talks with Adam. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's smart, and he always comes prepared, and I like that. So he dropped some new stuff on me with the 9/11 stuff. I learned a few new things there, so that's cool. And you definitely blew his. I don't know if you wanted to say it, but I think you definitely blew his fucking mind with Thomas Massie and his stuff, and I think he's probably going to Google right now and doing some research on it. So I think you dropped a good bomb on him there. So props to you.
Yeah. I mean, I've been like, sitting in the wings watching all this stuff unfold this week, and I'm just like, man, I see this whole like, new narrative around this guy, and I'm like, man, I mean, because like, dude, everybody, I mean, everybody likes what this guy says. I mean, he's like he's like the most popular, politician in America right now, I think. Like he says all this good stuff, and then you're like, oh, like what's this guy actually like really about? And I started looking into this a couple years ago because I was like, who is this guy? Where did he come from? I'm like, oh dang, he's like he's into like this weird stuff from MIT, and oh, he's a demolay, and like you're just like, yeah, there's a little more to it, than meets the eye,
We should
So
we should do a little something on him.
yeah, and I mean, I think it's like I said, me and my buddy, I was up in Portland the other day, and I'm like, you heard it here. This is on Tuesday, or actually on Monday. But before the results are in, I was like, as you heard it here first. He's going to lose the primary, and like he's going to be more popular than ever, and then he's going to be 2028. He's going to make a run. He's going to be so. We started like looking at on a poly market and all the like, what's the odds on Massey 28?
There you go.
You heard it here first. This is the bet.
There you go. Okay, man. Crazy. Well, okay. Well, that's that. I'm more convinced that we should do something on him. Maybe we could look. Maybe sometime around June or July, we'd do something on Massey.
Oh yeah, we'll
that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Cool, buddy.
Yeah. So,
all right, man.
Kentucky in general, there's actually a lot more than meets the eye in Kentucky.
Yes, dog. If the show Justified taught me anything, it taught me there's more than meets the eye in Kentucky. That's for damn sure. So that's cool, man. Well, thanks, bro. This was great, and everyone, make sure to tune in tomorrow because we're gonna have another awesome episode. Yeah, man. Anything else before we go, man? Anything else you want to say?
No, man. I'm just trying to like get the final prep done for tomorrow. I'm trying to drop the heat. So it's gonna be it should be a really interesting show.
I'm excited. Right on, guys. Well, make sure to tune in tomorrow, guys. We're gonna drop another awesome bomb on you. Like I said last episode, make sure to please double check to make sure you're subscribed. And if you aren't, obviously subscribe. Even if you are subscribed, just double check to make sure you're subscribed because I feel like we hit a bit of a wall and we've actually gone a bit backwards. But when I mentioned that last episode, we jumped up like at least 12 people. So I feel like some of those people were people that maybe were unsubscribed non-purposely, not on purpose, and maybe it was a system glitch or something. I don't know. But yeah, if you are subscribed, then make sure to maybe just make a habit to share with someone else to subscribe. We would love to get up to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. Drop a like, drop a nice comment. It helps with the algorithm to get the word out there. I think we've been bringing on some awesome guests, but there are some people that have told me once you hit 1K, once you get a bit more. So yeah, the more you put us in the algorithm, the more you share us, and the more numbers we can get. We can get better guests. We really can, for both sides of the conversation. So make sure to do that. And yeah, I guess that's about it, guys. Also, make sure to check out the Scott Horton Academy. I finally started my first course last week, a little over a week ago. I'm doing history of the War on Terror. So yeah, that's cool. Go to scotthortonacademy.com/divulgence and you'll get a nice discount. And yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but our boy Scott Horton fucking finally got on Joe Rogan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So props to him. I mean, he
Oh,
deserves.
Rogie.
Oh, Rogie, yeah. I mean, at least he's got someone. I mean, fuck, man. At least he's got someone on there who's he's gonna just spit straight facts at him, and he's not gonna fucking. So, yeah. So good for him.
We're gonna probably talk about Rogie tomorrow a little bit.
Nice, good, good, man.
It'll come up.
I've been watching a lot more like commentary stuff about Rogan and his shows and stuff. Shout out to Too Lazy to Try. I started on his Patreon and he's really good. And yeah, Rogan is sketchy as fuck, man. So yeah, I definitely would like to get the word out on him. And yeah, there's no reason he should be as rich as he is. It's just he's obviously yeah.
I think I've got some reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. We'll leave it at that. So yeah, man.
We should we should just do like a full on episode. That we could do a full episode just about him.
I'm down.
Total sus lord. Okay,
I'll need some time to prep on that, but I'm down for that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Cool. But cool, man. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, and aloha.
Sounds good. All right, guys. All the best, and tune in tomorrow. And I'm sure I said it. I say it all the time. Thank you guys so much for the support, and thank you to you guys in the chat. And yeah, all the best. Enjoy the rest of your evening.